Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find. I am your host, Nick. Today, it's going to be a pretty good one. It is episode 49. We are recapping the trade deadline. As you can see by the title, the trade deadline is over. I tried to give it some time. I tried to wait. It's been about 34 minutes exactly since the deadline, since the official time of the deadline. Usually there's some trades that always trickle in, so I tried to give it some time. Deadline is done for the Dodgers. The deadline is done for everyone in the big leagues. So, this is your squad. This is your team. So we're going to recap all that. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications. You can follow us on social media at Talking Blue Pod, everywhere, TikTok, Instagram, X. You can follow myself at Talking Blue Nick. I know if you follow me, or I should say you know if you follow me, I have been tweeting a lot the last 48 to 72 hours. As always, you can get Talking Blue stuff as well on Reddit at competitive-week8715. So, like I said, we're going to recap the trade deadline. I apologize in advance if it's a little all over the place. I kind of don't have anything prepared in terms of like how I'm going to do it. Just going to talk about the couple acquisitions the Dodgers made, stuff they didn't make, and then the whole deadline. So, if you're a Dodger fan like me, listening to this podcast, you probably already know what the Dodgers acquired. They acquired, hopefully I'm not breaking any news to you, but if I am, they acquired Brock Stewart, a right-handed relief pitcher from the Twins, who actually was in the Dodgers organization previously. Pretty solid reliever. Then they acquired Alex Call, an outfielder for the Nationals, right-handed hitting outfielder, traditionally a corner outfielder, 30 years old. And that's pretty much all they acquired, other than a lot of minor league prospect kind of players. They sent out Dustin May, as a lot of people had predicted. He goes to the Boston Red Sox. James Outman, he goes to the Minnesota Twins. Another player you might know, Hunter Fiducia, backup catcher. He's been in the minor leagues for a while. He goes to the Tampa Bay Rays in a little three-way trade. So I'm going to try to figure out where to go with all this. Overall, the trade deadline, in terms of Major League Baseball, was actually a very fun deadline. I kind of talked about this, if you guys remember, about a week ago. I made a trade deadline preview, explained how a lot of the trade deadline stuff goes. I explained how a lot of it has changed in the last few years since the postseason has expanded. A lot of trades happen, same thing the last 48 hours or so. A ton of trades go down. But I think I had said that I thought there was a lot less blockbuster trades, a lot less big trades. This trade deadline had a lot of that. This was definitely the best trade deadline probably since 2021, which I had talked about. So there was a lot of trades, a lot of big trades, a lot of teams acquired a lot of good players. So obviously most notably the San Diego Padres, as they just do every single trade deadline. It seems like the Dodgers and Padres are. The Dodgers are the team that rules the offseason with free agent signings and maybe a couple trades. And the Padres are the team that just dominates the trade deadline. I mean, A.J. Preller, it's honestly incredible, the trades he makes. So, of course, it's headlined by Mason Miller. They acquired Mason Miller. Yes, shocking move. Mason Miller gets traded from the Athletics to the Padres. They also got another pitcher in that deal. They also made a deal with the Baltimore Orioles, acquiring not one but two players, Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano. Two bats that were expected to go at the deadline, go in one trade to the Padres. I know I'm forgetting some other ones. They got Nestor Cortez from the Brewers. The last 48 hours have been crazy. I've just been literally sitting at home, staring at Twitter, staring at X, refreshing, all that stuff. So the Padres made a ton of moves. There was a lot of relievers traded. So we talked about going into the deadline, the Dodgers' biggest needs. At the top, it was definitely bullpen, relievers. Then after that, you would have liked them to acquire a bat. If I would have told you, a week ago, the future, and I would have said to you, this is a reliever deadline, you probably would have been excited and thought that's great, perfect for the Dodgers. So I see a lot of people's reactions on X. Some people overreacting, some people, I guess you could say, underreacting, properly reacting. I'll give you my reaction to the deals, and I'll talk about them a little bit more in depth, but considering that the deadline is done, a little underwhelming. I talked about it before. I didn't expect the Dodgers to go crazy this deadline. I didn't expect a ton of moves. I didn't necessarily expect a blockbuster. I did say that if some big relievers were traded, which they were, I thought the Dodgers would get one of them. Noticeably, Brian Helsley. I thought that he was a lock to get for the Dodgers. Not a lock, but very good chance. He did get traded, but to the Mets, surprisingly. And then another guy I thought made a lot of sense, Griffin Jax, also got traded at the buzzer. It was I think it was actually announced after the deadline. He, of all teams, goes to the Rays. I had started to think a couple days ago there was a chance the Dodgers would have a deadline like this. You can't go every trade deadline, unless you're AJ Preller, I guess, and sell a lot of prospects. Andrew Friedman doesn't like to do that. I had said before how Andrew Friedman, before the season started, he kind of came out and said, the Dodgers really made all these moves to try to avoid what the Padres just did or some other teams acquiring a bunch of players, making a bunch of moves at the deadline. And he definitely stuck to that stance this deadline. Last year, while they didn't break the bank at the deadline, they did acquire Michael Kopech, Tommy Edman, Jack Flaherty, Kevin Kiermaier, gave away some prospects, not really anything major, nothing that it appears would come back to bite them, but they did make a lot of moves. And last year, the Dodgers obviously put up a ton of resources into the roster, had a ton of injuries. They went into the year with Glasnow and Yamamoto. They had to trade for Jack Flaherty. So I know it's a little all over the place, but I think you have to give them some grace. The Dodgers, the last few years, have done so much at the deadlines, in the offseason. Eventually, there's going to be a time period where they're not going to make a ton of moves. This seemed like it was the time. Now, the reason it's underwhelming is, one, it probably feels a little underwhelming because of how the deadline played out. If the deadline played out the way it was starting to look 2 days ago, and maybe the biggest player traded was Ryan Helsley or something like that, then the deadline that they had would actually seem pretty solid. Because of what did transpire with a lot of teams, like I said, Ryan Helsley was traded, David Bednar was traded, Griffin Jax was traded, like I said, Mason Miller was traded out of nowhere. I never thought that was going to happen. As well as Johan Duran, he actually got traded. I wasn't sure if that was going to happen. So a lot of really good players got traded, including Carlos Correa. Never saw that coming. He got traded. There was a bunch of other moves as well. A couple of surprise sellers, which also kind of hurt the Dodgers. It was kind of a weird deadline. A lot of things going on at once. Like I had said before, the Dodgers' rotation has been getting healthy. So it didn't really appear the Dodgers were going to go after any starting pitchers. It was such a reliever-heavy trade deadline that a lot of relievers had a very high asking price. And on top of that, there were a couple surprise sellers, really only the Giants, and that hurts the Dodgers because the Giants aren't going to sell to the Dodgers. They traded away Tyler Rogers, the submarine pitcher, who's very good, limits hard contact. He went to the Mets. And then at the very last second, they traded Camilo Doval to the Yankees. So two really good relief pitchers the Dodgers could have surely benefited, but obviously they're not going to trade to the rival Giants. So again, I apologize if I'm all over the place, just kind of rambling. So I think it feels a little underwhelming because of all those other moves. What hurts the Dodgers, I'll say what some of the trades that did hurt the Dodgers, again, when it started to look like Mason Miller was available, I started to get excited, and I started to think that's a move the Dodgers could pull off. They don't want to give up a lot of prospect capital, but if you're going to give up a lot, it might as well be for a guy that you know you're going to get for a long time, like Mason Miller. He's a unique player on the market because he's only been in the big leagues for a few years. You have him under control for, I think, until 2029 or something like that. So you get a closer for 4 or 5 years, basically. Again, Yohan Duran was traded. It wasn't a lock if he would get traded. Of course, another guy that didn't end up getting traded was Emmanuel Clase, because since I made my trade deadline pod, he's being investigated for gambling issues, so he wasn't available. But Yohan Duran did get traded. It was a pretty substantial package from the Phillies to get him. The two trades that definitely I think the Dodgers missed out on are two guys that got traded that they didn't get, and then one guy that didn't get traded. Helsley and Jax, who are the guys that I talked about. Helsley seemed like the perfect fit for the Dodgers. He was a guy that is a free agent at the end of the year, so it wasn't going to take too much to get him. And you trade for him, he slides right into that closer role. The Dodgers like to go bullpen by committee when they trade for a lot of guys. I think if they would have got Griffin Jax, it would have been like that. He wouldn't have become the closer. It would have just been matchup baseball like we saw last year in the playoffs. If they would have got Helsley, he would have became the closer. He would have had Vesia and Treinen as the setup guys, stuff like that. Him getting traded to the Mets really hurts. When it was looking like Duran was going to the Phillies, a couple other guys like Bednar went to the Yankees. Obviously, a couple other guys that were surprising like Camilo Doval. The Helsley trade hurts because they didn't give up that much, the Mets. The Dodgers definitely could have pulled that trade off. If you add Helsley to Brock Stewart and Alex Call, it's a really good deadline because you got two really solid relievers, really good relievers, especially Helsley. You got a decent bat to platoon with Conforto. That's one that hurts. Griffin Jax was looking like the only Twin to not get traded. In the very end, he ends up going to the Rays of all teams, which I thought maybe the Rays were going to end up selling or trading away. Another guy that I'll talk about. That hurts that they couldn't get Griffin Jax. When it was becoming clear the Twins were selling everybody, they traded Harrison Bader to the Phillies as well. They obviously had traded Duran the night before. They started trading relievers. They traded Stewart to the Dodgers. They traded Colombi, the left-hander. They traded Willie Castro to the Cubs. In the last hour of the deadline, Jax was the only one left. Other than Joe Ryan and Byron Buxton, who had looked unlikely, he was the only one left, and a lot of teams had got bullpen pieces. It looked like a perfect last-second trade for Friedman. That hurts that he did end up getting traded, and it wasn't to the Dodgers, and it was to the Rays of all teams. And they just gave up Taj Bradley. Dodgers could have given up Bobby Miller, didn't even have to give up a top prospect. Maybe the Twins view that differently, but two guys that have a lot of upside, maybe you tweak something. That one hurts. And then the last one is Fairbanks of the Twins. He ended up not getting traded, of the Rays. He ended up not getting traded. That's a guy I think, again, that the Dodgers could have pried away from the Rays. I think they would have liked to trade him, just didn't end up getting a deal in the end. So in the end, the Dodgers definitely went into this deadline and did not want to give away any top prospects. That hurts. I told you guys I'm not a prospect hugger. I think you should make trades that are there. Now, I'm not a psychopath like A.J. Preller and maybe Dave Dombrowski, and I'm only kidding, but I'm not like them because A.J. Preller traded away one of the 3 best prospects in baseball for a closer. That's not going over well with Padres Twitter, if you're on Padres Twitter. I think it'll be a good trade for them because he's a good pitcher, and I would have loved to have Mason Miller, but what they gave up for him, a lot of Padres are upset about that. Maybe they feel a little bit better after all the other trades that they've made. The Dodgers didn't want to give up any top prospects. What's kind of interesting is that they have a very good farm system, and they even kind of improved it with some of the smaller moves that they've made. It's a little weird that they didn't just make one more trade. They were one trade away from a very solid deadline. Now, like I said, I think the underwhelming feeling is more clouded because of what was a pretty crazy trade deadline. But they were one trade away. one more reliever away, whether it would have been Fairbanks, Helsley. It was reported that they did try for Kwan, but again, as time went on, it started to seem like it was, I don't want to say fake news, but like they were kind of connected to the Guardians because of the left field hole, but the Guardians were holding an extremely high return request for Kwan, and if the Dodgers weren't willing to pay for, Duran or for obviously, Miller or anything like that, then they clearly weren't really in it for Kwan. I doubt that they were really in it. I doubt like they had a deal in place. I'm sure they kind of said to the Dodgers, we want one of Zaire Hope or DePaula, and the Dodgers were like, we're not even willing to give you rushing. So that was also disappointing because there were teams that were coming off of Kwan before the Dodgers did. It was rumored the Astros were kind of involved. The Padres, they made moves for outfielders before the Dodgers got called. So in the end, the trade deadline is behind us. I'm going to try to move past that now. The trade deadline is behind us. It was a fun deadline as a baseball fan. As a Dodger fan, it was nice when we got Stewart. I thought that was the start of a pretty good deadline. Then once they got Call, it kind of signaled to me that was it. It was a little disappointing. Now, Call, I think, can be a good player. I'm not going to bash him or anything like that. But when they got Call, I was very hopeful for that Stephen Kwan notification to pop up. And once I realized it was Call, I kind of knew that was it, unless there was a last-second reliever trade. So, underwhelming trade deadline for sure. If I had to give it a grade, it feels harsh, but I'd probably go D-. Maybe you could just give it a C because you can't say the Dodgers got worse by any means. That's why I guess it's probably more fair to say C if I had to grade it. I could go, like I said, D-. It feels underwhelming, but it's hard. I guess it's to give them kind of a failing grade is a little unfair because they technically got better. But they put themselves in a spot. Now, obviously, like I talked about how the Dodgers clearly didn't want to pay the prospect premium for a lot of these guys. Again, sometimes it's unfair. You always see it on X. When your team doesn't acquire someone, everybody wants to criticize Andrew Friedman. But when Andrew Friedman makes all these moves that he's made in the last calendar year, everybody's talking about how much he's cooking. So it's an unfair game. If you're the GM, you get a lot of credit for making the moves he's made in the last year plus. I mean, just think in the year plus he's acquired Michael Kopech, Tommy Edman, Jack Flaherty. He acquired Snell, Roki Sasaki, Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates. Like, they made all these moves. Everybody talks about how Friedman's like the best GM in the game. Kind of has an underwhelming deadline, and a lot of people are upset about it. Again, I get it. It's part of the business, but I would give them a C+. But you could kind of make the case that the grade for the deadline is kind of determines on what happens with the injuries. So that's where I'll go next. So that will wrap up the deadline. Dodgers didn't want to pay the premium for a lot of these guys, it appears. But I also think that the Dodgers were banking on injuries returning. So I don't want to say the joke that a lot of people say on X and stuff like that is when your team doesn't acquire anyone and then the GM has a press conference and he says, well, we're getting Blake Snell and Max Muncy back. Those are two players we just acquired, and it's like a fake thing to the fans, like, hey. So, and a lot of fans get upset with that. It's, it is kind of like a stupid joke, but it is true in the Dodgers case. At the end of the day, the Dodgers acquired Brock Stewart, a very solid reliever. If you look at his numbers, he has very good numbers, throws hard, throws 5 legit pitches, fastball with a sinker, so he throws 4-seam, sinker, and a cutter, sweeper, changeup. Really good against right-handed hitters, does struggle against lefties a little bit, but definitely a guy that the Dodgers could use as a high-leverage guy. I don't think he will go above Blake Treiner or anything like that on the, trust tree or Bessia, but a guy that I could see like Evan Phillips the last few years, like the way they used him last year. So he has a very similar pitch mix, actually, to Evan Phillips. And then Alex Call. So Alex Call, he's 30 years old, so he's a little bit older. Like I said, corner outfielder guy. If you actually look at him, he actually looks a lot like Christian McCaffrey, the running back for the 49ers, but I'll read you his slash line: 274 with a 371 on base, 386 slug, and a 757 OPS. I think that gives him like a 115 OPS plus. So he's been a little bit better than league average, and he does hit left-handed pitching well. I think he has an OPS above 800 against lefties. He's going to slot into left field to platoon with Michael Conforto. He has very good chase numbers and whiff numbers. Doesn't strike out, doesn't chase. He walks, has pretty good defense in the outfield. You never know. He could be a perfect platoon guy who has big moments down the stretch here. So I don't think it's a bad move. Again, it's just a little underwhelming. Also, the Dodgers made they were in the three-way trade with the Rays and then the Reds. Got a couple prospects that a lot of people seem to be high on. They also traded away Dustin May and got a prospect from the Red Sox, who I think was the 12th overall pick in 2024. So another legit prospect. So again, I'm not going to talk too much about prospects. I feel like it's kind of pointless. But the Dodgers get away with acquiring a good reliever, acquiring a solid depth outfielder, platoon hitter, and then they improve their farm system. I know some people are annoyed by that. So right now, the biggest key, the most important thing for the Dodgers these final 2 months are obviously winning the division and getting in the postseason, but for the health of the team, it is keeping the 4 starters healthy. That's the biggest thing, the most important thing for the Dodgers. Shohei Ohtani, Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and then Tyler Glasnow. If you keep those 4 guys healthy, there's not a better 4 starters, a better 4-man rotation in baseball, and there won't be in the playoffs. I guess the only rotation that could compare would be like the Phillies, because they have Wheeler, Sanchez, Suarez, Luzardo is pretty good. But if you look at all the teams, Detroit's really good. Tarek Skubal's really good. They don't have another 3 guys like that. The Yankees, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays are very good. After Gosman, they have all pitchers that are kind of lumped together. Nobody is really dominant. Same thing with the Padres, same thing with the Cubs, same thing with the Brewers. Anyone you want to throw out, the Mets. The Braves aren't good this year, but it's really only the Phillies. Nobody can throw out a 4-man rotation like that. So that's the biggest, most important thing going for the rest of the way. It's the health of those guys. And all of those guys right now have come back. Tyler Glasnow's been back. He's been very good. He did struggle a little bit the other day against the Reds. I know I didn't review the Reds series, by the way. The Dodgers took 2 out of 3 from the Reds. Now they're going to go to Tampa Bay. The Dodgers played pretty well. There was just so much going on with the deadline stuff. I was trying to figure out, if the Dodgers made an earlier trade, I would have reviewed the series, but it just kind of all played out where I thought I should just talk about the deadline. Shohei Ohtani, of course, left the game he pitched on Wednesday early. It just came out he had a cramp. Yamamoto's been one of the 10 best pitchers in baseball this year. And then obviously, Blake Snell is going to return Saturday against the Rays. By all accounts, he's looked very good in the minor leagues. Velocity's been up to 98. The thing is that it's in front of them now, and you could see it actually happening. Now, we still have a long way to go. And if one of those guys got injured, nobody would be shocked. But 2 months ago, if you would have said the same thing, you need those 4 guys, nobody would have really believed you or responded to you. Shohei has been ramping up. Everything's gone well, except for the cramping the other day. Yamamoto's been healthy all year. He's been dominant. Glasnow has come back from the injury and has looked great. The velocity's been up. He's been looking really good. Looks like he's just getting healthier and getting stronger. We'll see what happens with Blake Snell, of course, but as far as we know in the minor leagues, he's looked really good. Hopefully he comes back and is on kind of the same track as Glasnow. Velocity ticking up, getting stronger, going deeper, all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, the Dodgers already made their bed, in a sense, before the season started. They acquired all that pitching. We didn't even talk about Roki Sasaki, who it looks like will come back at some point. I would imagine if he comes back and the Dodgers want to use him, it would be in some kind of bullpen role, which is a whole other interesting thing. So that's the biggest key for the Dodgers. If you can keep those 4 guys ready to go in October, we'll see how they all line up and who goes when. It'd be crazy to think Glass now pitching in a game 4, or who knows, Shohei. Who knows how that would all play out, but games 1 through 4, you can't do any wrong with those guys. Now, after that, Max Muncy will return next week. I believe the Dodgers play the Cardinals next week at home. Looks like he's going to come back. One of the issues that kind of came up as well with the deadline, I talked about how the rotation was getting healthy, so that made it, obvious they're not going to acquire any starters. In the lineup, obviously the Dodgers don't have much places to improve because of the incredible roster they have. You have Will Smith behind the plate. You have Freddie Freeman at first. You have Mookie at short. You have Max Muncy at third when he comes back. It really only leaves you any room for some kind of player that can play second or corner outfield. Obviously, they're going to keep Teoscar out there. He's on a big contract. They believe in him. That leaves one less spot. Andy Pajes is going to play somewhere because he's been great this year. It really only left room for some kind of left field second base spot. That's why Brendan Donovan or Stephen Kwan made sense. And what made it harder is that in the last month, Michael Conforto has played very well. Now, you could spin that into a positive or a negative. It's positive that he's played well, but Conforto has been bad for so long. Most people didn't want him here past the trade deadline. I kind of tend to agree. But he's played better as of late, and that just kind of, convinces the Dodgers to keep him around. Now, again, if he stays hot like he has in the month of July, plays better in the second half, then great. His at-bats have looked very good as of late. The fear is that he goes back to what he was the first two and a half months, and then you're stuck playing Conforto in a playoff series, and he has a 660 OPS. So it's kind of going to be hard to, because if you acquired a Stephen Kwan, what do you do with Michael Conforto? Again, it would have been great if they just acquired him and got rid of him, but the Dodgers clearly believe in him playing better. They believe in a lot of their guys. It's been crazy the last few days trying to wrap my head around all the trades that went on. What could the Dodgers get? So, like I said, to review everything, it was an underwhelming deadline. I wish they made a lot more moves, but realistically, I wish they made one more trade. That would have been really nice. Explain to you guys, we're going to go into August, going to Tampa Bay to start August. We're getting guys back. So, Trinan returned against the Reds. Now we're going to have Brock Stewart into the fold. Got to have guys come back. Blake Trinan's got to come back and be good. If you take a look at the bullpen, you have Blake Trinan, you have Brock Stewart now, you have Alex Vesia. Kirby Yates has got to be better, but Kirby Yates is there. It looks like Tanner Scott will return at some point, as well as Michael Kopech. If those two guys return, that's a great bullpen right there that can be good. And I didn't even mention guys like Jack Dreyer. I didn't even mention Ben Kasparius. So they have all the makings to be a really good team, have a good bullpen, and have great starting pitching. It's just they just got to remain healthy for the rest of the way. It's 2 months. That's pretty much all I have for you guys. It's time to get hot, Dodgers. The Padres just made a ton of moves. They're going to be on your tail. They are only 3 games back. They just acquired 1,000 players. The Mets made a lot of really good moves there in the National League. The Phillies made a lot of good moves. Cubs made a couple solid moves. The Brewers have been very good this year. The National League is a juggernaut. But at the end of the day, even with all the moves made, the Dodgers are still the best team in baseball, I believe. Because nobody can run a rotation out there like they can when they're healthy. When the lineup is hitting, nobody can run a lineup out there like that. I don't care what the Padres acquired. They don't have what the Dodgers have. Thank you guys for listening. I hope that wasn't too confusing. I hope you guys enjoyed the deadline. I think that Alex Call and especially Brock Stewart can really help the team. Dodgers are going to get healthy. It's time to get hot in August. No more 500 ball, no more struggling. The Rays have been cold. They just lost a few games to the Yankees. Go into Tampa, make a statement this first weekend. I will see if I can preview this Rays series. It's going to be a little hard. I told you guys I have a lot of physical therapy going on, so it's kind of harder for me to preview any series right now. So I don't think I'm going to be able to do that, but I'm looking forward to watching the second half Dodgers, the August Dodgers. This is when the Dodgers got hot last year, post-trade deadline in August. So the Dodgers got to do the same thing this year to create some space in the division, to get into the playoffs. But the most important thing is the health. If you're not healthy, you're not going to win any games. You got to keep those 4 guys healthy. If you can keep those four guys healthy in the rotation, the Dodgers can repeat. So as always, thank you guys for listening. You can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. You guys know the deal. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. You can follow myself at Talking Blue Nick, as well as Reddit at competitive-week8715. Thank you guys for listening to my thoughts on the trade deadline. I know it was a little all over the place, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed the deadline. Let's get ready to enjoy a red-hot August for the Dodgers.